Oh, there we go.
I'd like to welcome everyone this week to this week's edition of Belonging, which is Imperial as One's exploration into the BAME experience. And this week, I say this every week, but this week again, we have an outstanding guest in Abdul Rob. And Abdul Rob, I've known him for a few years. He's a director of SMM Media. He's a social justice campaigner, and he's a former civil servant. I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I am going to ask him a few questions about his early life and about how it is that he came to get his sense of belonging. So Abdul, I just want to welcome you this afternoon to the Belonging series and ask you that question. What is it that gave you that early sense of belonging in childhood or wherever?
Oh, hi, Wayne. Thanks for inviting me to be part of a illustrious group of people. I noticed you had great people like Donald Palmer recently and my brother Rob Neal. So it almost feels like we're part of a club, and I'm anything that you're involved in, the Reach Society, Donald, Rob, it's a privilege and a pleasure. And thanks for thinking that I'm interesting enough to be part of what you're doing. So and it's nice. It's nice to do that. And we had a good chat on Wednesday as part of the prep. I think like many things, as you get older, you do realise that the lessons that your parents may have forced upon you at the time, which weren't very pleasant, you know, it is your upbringing. It's either your heredity or your environment. And I think it's a bit of both. And in many ways, unfortunately, both my parents have passed away. My mum passed away 2 years ago suddenly.
Okay.
But she was in holidaying in Bangladesh. She was just shy of her 70th birthday.
Wow.
You know, a woman who was married for many years, 8 children. She was widowed quite young.
Yeah.
You know, at the age of 42. My father recently passed away in 1992. So a few weeks ago, we commemorated his 29th anniversary of him passing away. So I think in many ways it is my parents. God bless them, and in different ways, my dad and my mum, but also people like yourself, people around me. I've always been lucky and privileged. I was thinking this morning about some school teachers of mine as well.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's been parents. Whilst when I reflect on some of those experiences in today's day and age, you'd have the social services called in.
we won't go there, but I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I think there were some harsh lessons, and there was no options, no choices. So I think if I go back, it is my parents, and I've been really lucky and blessed in that I've had some amazing teachers.
Yeah.
My children are older now. My son will be 20 in September, and my daughter will be 22 in November. And I used to say to them, teachers are also part of our upbringing.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate in my primary school. I had some really good teachers who, to this day, I remember their life lessons.
Brilliant.
In my secondary school, I had some amazing teachers, and certain things like keeping my shoes clean and polished every day. You know, maybe a bit of OCD, but when I do wear a suit, if we are able to wear suits again, having clean shoes, from my housemaster at Highbury Grove School, Mr. Trimble. So I think there are people, and obviously friends like yourself, Rob, Neal, Donald, and lots of other people. And I tend to radiate towards people that I can learn things from. I think one thing I was taught many years ago is don't try to be the cleverest person in the room.
Right, that's good.
And sadly, I think, and we've been to many events and had many conversations where there are some people who try to be the cleverest person in the room. And my view is, I'd like to learn off people every day. I think, what did I learn today? Who did I learn from? And even if I don't agree with that person today, maybe a few days later, I think, oh, actually, that was a learning point that maybe I didn't get at the time. But when I boil it down, I think my mum and dad, in many ways, look, we're all immigrant families. We're all part of second, third generation, and we can all. I think it's right that we look back on what our parents did, why they came here, You know, my mum always used to joke that we only came to this country to eat because we were hungry with our empty bellies. Why would anyone come to this cold country? So when she used to sit with her peers and women of her generation, who were amazing, all our mums, you know, amazing women, you know, and I think we don't always celebrate the sacrifices, the hard work that our mothers and for some people's grandmothers made when they came here as young women, some 16, 17, 18, 19, barely children. So she would always joke, you know, we came here because we were hungry. Why would we leave our beautiful country, Bangladesh, Jamaica, India, the sun and everything else? But, you know, because our hunger brought us here, there was a reason that we came here. And obviously many of our fathers went into jobs, businesses, and they sustained two suits of family here, family back home. You know, and they worked hard. And sometimes when you reflect on the way they themselves were quite young as well. You know,
yes, they were.
Very, very young men who had to grow up quickly and had to have all the pressures. So maybe they didn't have that level of education or insight that we take for granted today. So when I reflect and talk to some of my older friends about the way we were treated, the kind of lessons, brackets, punishment we were given, who got the worst of it, you can see, and not to make excuses, but, you know, I look back on those with a bit of fondness at times.
I know exactly what you. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. You made a real good reference with regards to your parents and the principles which they kind of like instilled in you. You know, they came here because we were hungry. Why would you come to this country from Bangladesh or wherever? What was the driving force for them? But they wanted you to have a better life. How did they go about instilling like work ethic or into you? What was it that you can remember about what they did when you were growing up, which gave you that level of discipline, that level of sense of belonging?
Well, I think number one, you didn't have a choice.
Fair enough.
I mean, I'm one of 8 children, so there's 4 boys, 4 girls in my family.
Right.
I've got an older sister. I'm the eldest boy, so that sometimes makes a big difference in Asian cultures, maybe other cultures. The boy and where you are, and my dad's story, if I may, he was born in the 1920s, so he was born a British subject.
Right. Yeah.
Then he becomes partition, and tomorrow is the partition of India and Pakistan, believe it or not, for those who study history. 1947, I believe, when it happened. So wherever it is tomorrow will be the anniversary. So my dad went from being British. He fought in the Second World War as a young man in the Indian British Navy. Then he becomes East Pakistan, because we had East and West Pakistan. Then he gets invited to come to this country in 1958. Then becomes British again. And then whilst being East Pakistani and British in 1971, and this year's the 50th anniversary of Bangladesh becoming an independent nation, liberated from Pakistan. So he has all that, and I use that to say actually that his identity has always been fluid.
Yes.
He was born under the banner of the British Empire. You know, and when he died, you know, I returned his body. But for him, he came here as a young man. We think he reduced his age by 5 years, because I think in those days, because we could get onto that later. But I think in those days you had to be under 30. So my dad was 29 when he came here in 1958. And young man from the villages of Bangladesh, the son of a Islamic scholar. You know, not well educated. Came here. My uncle, his older brother, was already here, so he kind of helped him bring him over. My dad works in a rubber factory in St Albans. St Albans is quite, again, you know, these are the things that we have to look into and study as part of our history. St Albans was a place that lots of South Asian men, migrants, and I think possibly some Caribbean communities went to worked in a rubber factory. There's a Sunblessed bakery there as well. So my dad, he fell out with some people. My dad did have some anger issues. You know, he spoke his mind.
Spoke his mind, yeah.
Yeah, and then within 4 short years, by 1962, he opened up one of the first halal butchers in the UK in King's Cross.
Right.
Which I always found quite amazing, that within 4 years of arriving in the UK, for the very need to provide food and provision for his family back home, pretty much like your parents. You know, we spoke about your parents' journey and everyone else's. So as well as earning a living, having to settle into a foreign country, and obviously 1958 Britain, we've all seen the black, you know, it was different. He then somehow buys a freehold property, 38 North Down Street, N1 in King's Cross, not 10 minutes walk from King's Cross station. And the top half is a house, the bottom half is a halal butchers and grocers.
Yeah.
And I think from that you know, the shop became a hub, and his thing was, actually, I'm here to serve my community. I'm here to provide halal meat. It was very difficult to provide halal meat for a lot of people. And when I speak to a lot of my uncles who are still alive, they talk about how they had to secretly buy chicken and slaughter it in a halal way, you know, in order for them to eat, which the laws at the time may have prohibited. I'm not sure what they would have done. And obviously spices and the vegetables and everything else that he was. So that hard work. And then obviously my mum arrived here in 1967 as a young lady. Story goes, my dad didn't want to get married. He was forced into getting married. So she came here as a young lady of maybe 18, 19 years of age, you know, very young. And literally in a house full of men where they all turfed out. You know, the story goes, as soon as my mum arrived, my uncle, who sadly passed away 2 years ago, said she turfed us all out. You know, and at the time, my dad was in business with one of his younger brothers. So my uncle brought his wife over, so it became a bit of a family home. And from a very early age, I just recall, you know, the sound of meat cleavers and people in the shop, and things being weighed, and spices and funny looking vegetables, aubergines, which, you know, okra, kerala, white radish, garlic chilies, and constantly up early in the morning, going to the wholesalers, coming back late at night, the paraffin heater. My mum then became a machinist. She was an indoor machinist, so she wanted to earn some money. So she started every Thursday when she'd buy the Hackney and Islington Gazette and circle outdoor machining opportunities. And there'd be all these amazing Greek Cypriot people who were quite big in that industry, bringing cloth and material for my mum to make skirts and dresses. And one day it dawned upon me that my mum was being paid less than £1 to make these items. And the first time I went to Oxford Street with one of my Greek Cypriot aunties, I went to Debenhams and I saw the very same outfit being sold for £35. And I thought, wow, my mum's getting £1 and they're selling it for 35, you know.
Wow.
But again, her thing was, you know, she can do this from home. She's got kids to bring up, cooking and cleaning. And we were always asked to make the belts and the collars.
Yeah.
So we used to get bits of wire hangers, any pencil. So we would turn these collars and belts inside out to go to adorn the outfit. So whenever we came back from school, there was a bundle of these things for us to do. And it was a case, you're going to do it. There was no choice. You know?
To me, it sounds, based on what you've said here, which is really fascinating, there was that passion to work, not passion to work. You worked because you had to survive.
Necessity. It was
the
a necessity.
But it to me, it sounds like it gave, would you say it gave you a strong work ethic? Because it sounds, whether or not you wanted to or not, there was always work which your parents had found you to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. With my mum, I think with my older sister, it then became a race. Who could do the most belts and collars?
Okay.
You'd have that competition, boys v
Yeah.
girls and everything else. And in my dad's shop, I was interested in, the art of cutting meat. I'm a qualified butcher as
Right.
well.
Okay.
I would
Yeah.
watch my dad, and I would be fascinated with the knives and how he would cut chicken. And I was excused for any of those who are maybe vegetarians or vegans,
Mhm.
but freshly slaughtered carcasses and the way you'd cut it,
Mhm.
and the angle you'd cut it, the way you take the fat off and do this, and fish. We'd
Mhm.
import fish from Bangladesh, 50 types of different fish,
Mhm.
and how that would be cut. You'd have the mechanical bench saws. You had to be
Yeah.
careful. Luckily, I've still got all my fingers. Never had an injury. Only one injury, one finger when he got caught in my uncle's car.
Okay. That's
Um, and that was it. So I was just interested, and I was just interested in the people. And we spoke on Wednesday that our shop,
Mhm.
whilst it was a halal butcher shop, it didn't just serve South Asian community. It served
Yeah.
Greek people,
Yeah.
Chinese people, Jamaican, Ghanaian, Nigerian, all the community in King's Cross
Mhm.
who wanted something from their homeland, be it an okra, a chili, a bit of dry fish,
Mhm.
yam, some seasoning, some spices, or just a conversation.
Mhm.
The shop was always full of people from around the world conversing in broken English, but everyone knew what they were saying to each other. They would be talking about the good things, the funny things, the family issues back home, and occasionally, the unfortunate racist attacks that may have happened,
Mhm.
and it was just amazing to see, in the shop, all the different people talking and how an okra could be the one thing that everyone found in common interest. And who would cook the best okra?
Mhm.
How would my Jamaican auntie cook it? How would my Nigerian auntie cook it? And the arguments about, no, do it this way, do it that way. And that was just great. And I was just wanting to serve people. I'm very good at maths. So one thing I'm good at is weighing things.
Mhm.
If a
Mhm.
chicken is 32 pence a pound and it's £4, 12 ounces, I can work out in my head how
Mhm.
much that is straight away. You have
Yeah.
to do it manually, no
Yeah.
machines.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
dad
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
make you count things, because
Yeah.
he was good at maths. So he
Yeah.
was like, no, you can't, you have to, it's this much. How much does it
Yeah.
weigh? If it's,
Yeah.
how many ounces, how many
Yeah.
pounds? So
Yeah.
obviously, 16 ounces in a pound and everything
Yeah.
else. And you break it down,
Yeah.
and just serving people and listening to stories and just wanting to be kind of service to the elders,
Mhm.
and a lot of these elders were my friends' parents as well,
Mhm.
so
So,
it's auntie and uncle.
so you were kind of like in a melting pot. The I'm gonna put it. The butcher's shop turned into like a melting pot
Community
because
center.
a community center. Yeah,
Yeah.
because everybody came in and you became so. How, it sounds to me like you absorbed a lot of the cultures,
Totally.
and you relished understanding about the different cultures and the differences and the similarities. Um, so, in terms of kind of like thinking about this notion of belonging, right? Where did you, because you've got so many influences coming in from, how did that make you, your sense of who you were, what the world was around you, and how you fitted in?
I think we spoke about Wednesday. My dad, every now and again, every few days, maybe most days, they'd have about 6 or 7 o'clock when things were quiet. They'd just be there having cups of tea and talking,
Mm-hmm.
and and at least 2 or 3 times a week, Wayne, my dad would read letters. So the
Mm-hmm.
old air letters, part avion, airmail,
Right, yeah,
younger people,
yeah,
those who are under 25, letters you'd come from around the world,
yeah,
and it'd take 7 to 10 days, and it'd be light blue, part avion, airmail. And because most of the people in our community of Bangladeshi heritage, half weren't able to read and write.
right,
Doesn't
right,
mean they were very clever people in other ways, but literacy wasn't. So my dad would regularly, 2 or 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week, read letters and write letters for people.
yeah, yeah,
And these would be letters from back in Bangladesh, what's happening with the cows and the fields and
yeah,
family. And then he'd write letters for people that wanted to say to their families what's going on. Because up until the mid 80s, most of the men were men on their own. Families
right,
hadn't come in. So my dad would always talk about, look, we came here as young men for 5 years to make as much money as we could, to buy land, to build a property and go home. But he said, we fell into the trap. We're not going home. We belong here. And he said, our children belong here. And he would always talk about recreating Bangladesh in your heart, but not in your head. His view was the moment you started recreating that in your head, you would create a ghetto. And he would point to me and any other children and say, look, these are it's these children and their futures that we got to secure. They will not go back to Bangladesh. They are here and they belong here. This is the future we gave them. And he would lament at the fact that maybe it wasn't the thing that they wanted to do, but he said, look, we were taken in by the idea of coming here. None of us has gone back after 5 years. And they all agreed that they'd been here for 10 or 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
His attitude was, our children need to, they're part of this society.
Yeah.
But he would also say, those of you who don't believe that, go home. I'll buy you a ticket. Because if you don't be part of what you do, if you don't get involved in things, my dad was always active in local politics, in communities. He was involved in every mosque, the East London Mosque, the Brick Lane Mosque. He was a committee member of that. He was on the police subcommittee as well. He set up a Muslim association. So our house was always full of letters and minutes of meetings, and I would be dragged to take minutes of meetings at the age of 9 or 10.
Yeah. So,
you know, so it came from that, and I was always comfortable with who I was. And there was occasions where I didn't always appreciate having to interpret Bengali into English for newly arrived migrants. I just thought, and I did go through a phase, but I think I've always felt comfortable with being English. I've always felt comfortable being British. It's not an issue for me. I know who I am. Yes, I've got my Bangladesh football top on, as you can see. Maybe I'll fail the Norman Tebbit cricket test when I have to. That's not a problem for me in that sense. So I think for my parents, my dad particularly, the conversations he would have about, we have created a situation for our children by having them here, by getting married. We didn't go back home. Our 5-year plan, we chucked in a bin. You know, because we want more.
Let me. I'm listening to what you're saying and about the level of exposure which your dad. He was like, to me, it sounds like he was a community activist. He was a hub. The shop became, as you said, the community center. But he offered services, reading letters, writing letters, working with the local authorities to embed the South Asian community, to put a place for the South Asian community within the region where you were. How did that then translate to your kind of like career ambitions? Because you were exposed to a lot of this from a very early age, in kind of like what you then wanted to do with your life and how that's led to the kinds of things which you've done and are currently doing.
I mean, there was never a plan. the plan for me and what it turned out to be two different things. But I think my dad always instilled in me the need to be a leader, the need to stand up to bullies. If you can, I was always good at football and sports. I was school football captain. You know, so I was always in that leadership position, because when you're good at sports, football, cricket, athletics, you do get elevated. Unfortunately, to a certain position, and sometimes you're looked upon in a different way. So from the age of 11, 10, I'm the captain of my school football team, and that comes with a leadership responsibility. My teacher, Mr. Ransom, God bless him, amazing man. He would always talk about he would say, look, you're not my best player, but you're my most reliable player. You're the one I can communicate with. You're the one that I can talk to. And I thought, wow, yeah, I may not be the best player, but what I am is, by him saying to me that I rely on you to reach out to the others, you think, wow, that's a level of responsibility, you know, from that point of view. So that was always instilled in me by teachers. I was also the captain of our quiz team. So being put into those leadership positions, you sometimes are penny drops actually, and also being the eldest boy, having younger siblings, you know, having to change nappies and to do things, and to be dragged along to meetings by my dad, and to be told to, and as well as the services my dad offered, he offered myself and my sister. We were going to the benefit centre, the housing centre, with newly arrived families and filling in letters and forms. So you realise actually our ability to be bilingual, to read and write English and Bengali, and that we didn't have a choice, but secretly kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I don't like bullies, although when I look back on a few periods, I may have been a bully, and at times at school. One particular incident comes into focus, but we won't talk about that. But my dad always had the view that you've got to stand up for other people. If we're going to create a community, we've got to stand and be outspoken, because everything my dad did, he would fight the National Front. He would go toe to toe with the National Front. If they did anything, he would never back down from a fight. Not to advocate violence, but his thing is actually, if you let bullies have their way, you won't be remembered for too long. You've got to stop them, and you've got to meet them on their own terms. So from that point of view, I mean, originally the idea was, an uncle of mine was a well-known barrister and lawyer. The idea was that I was to follow him and do that, but that went out the window when my dad went to Bangladesh just before my exams, O levels and GCSEs in 1986, and he didn't come back for 2 years. So I thought, I'm not going to college or uni. So I got a job at the post office. Just what I wanted to earn money. Just wanted to earn money, and that was it. So all these things were not by design or accidental. But at the post office, I became what they call a postman higher grade. I was supervising postmen at age 18 who were 3 times my age. So I'm supervising 18 years of age postmen who are 50, 60, our age now, although we're not 65. So that leadership role was always there. And then after a while, I thought, well, I'm earning good money at the post office. And also in those days, a lot of it was you had housekeeping. So I was earning just under £200 a week at the post office without overtime in 1988. Good money for a kid. And I'd give my mum £150 a week housekeeping. To run the house. Send back to Bangladesh. My dad decided not to come back because he was slightly ill. And I thought, fine, don't come back. Just spend your time there. Because that was the longest time my dad has spent in Bangladesh since he came to the UK in 1958. So we kind of closed the shop up, kind of put the shop into semi-retirement. Occasionally opened it up when we needed to, but just left it. And I just went into work, and I just thought, well, I have to make some money, younger brothers and sisters. And ironically, when my dad came back, I was a bit concerned about, he asked me about my studies, that I'm working now. Oh dear, what do we do? And he took it, and then all the money I'd gave to my parents, Wayne, my dad gave me £3,000 back.
Wow.
As my savings. He said, look, you've given this to us, that this is our gift back to you. So I'm 18 years of age. I've gone to NatWest, National Westminster Building Society, and I've opened up a sterling asset account with £3,000. The passbook. Really, really happy. But then I realized actually my parents really respected the fact that I was earning for the family. I put my studies to one side, and they gave the money back, was part of it. But at the same time, my dad was buying land and other such things in Bangladesh for the wider family. So I kind of felt actually I'm carrying on his tradition of being a provider for the family. Wasn't an issue for me. And then I joined the Home Office in 1989. I just thought, actually, no, I need to make use of my qualifications. This is great, but I don't want to be in the post office forever. I don't want to be doing shift work. What's the money was good. And then in August 89, I joined the Home Office, prison service.
How was it? How was it? What was it that motivated you to join like the Home Office as such, and especially like prison service? I know based on what you've said about that community spirit, but what was it that kind of like appealed, if it appealed, or was it another?
I was reading the Evening Standard one evening
Mm-hmm.
at home, and there was an advert that said, "What did you do today?" And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, not much. Yes, I've made sure letters have gone to around the country.
Yeah.
I thought, actually, I haven't done much. And it said, if you've got this, this, and this, if you believe in X, Y, and Z, think about joining the Home Office. So
Wow.
I applied, sat a test, passed the interview, was given a job offer. It took nearly 3 months to get the job. I nearly said, I don't want the job. You can stick it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I joined what was the prison department, and that's where I was posted to, in the personnel unit of the prison service in Westminster. Building is now luxury flats, Cleveland House, Page Street, off Hall Street Road. And I obviously, the only thing I knew about the prison service was Pentonville Prison, that was near where I lived in King's Cross, Islington. We'd run past it every day.
Yeah,
that's the only. And Holloway Prison.
Yeah,
far.
Just
we'd play football there, and so that was it. And I just joined, and I kind of found, initially it was a bit, why am I here? I sat down, I was given this huge manual of information to look at, and I thought, oh no, this is, oh dear, what do I do? Went out at lunchtime, Wayne. I went to the local market to have some lunch, and I thought, right, if I go back, I go back. If not, I go home. No. and I went back and started to absorb all the information about the prison service. I was in the headquarters part of the prison service, overseeing all the HR policies. And I thought, wow, what does all this mean? What do all these things mean? It's almost like foreign language, but I kind of did my training, got used to it, started to be part of the team, understood the organization, what was going on. When I joined the prison service in 1989, the population was about 45,000. When I left in 2016, the population was around 95,000.
Wow.
So in my 27 years, I think we doubled the prison population.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness.
So and from then, I just kind of got a sense of, and again, that was the HR part of the prison service, was serving people, was looking after people, was taking care of everyday needs that people had around their everyday life. So again, kind of used my ability around helping people and making sure people were satisfied with things. And I became, believe it or not, at quite a young age, an expert on maternity leave.
Okay.
So I would run surgeries for women that were pregnant and explain their maternity leave.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'd organise, dropping sessions between pregnant women that were so they could share their experiences. 2021, my mum's had 8 kids, so I'm thinking, well, you know what, these women need to come together. So I would get mothers that had come back from work to talk to mothers who are about to go off from work, to share, because it was a weird experience, because all the rules around maternity leave, your MAP B1 form and your statutory maternity pay and all. If you're a first-time mum, it's a lot to take in, and the world of work, and I became quite friendly with a lot of younger mums, some Black and Asian females that had kids at an early age. And ironically, they would talk to more white senior women who were having children at a later age about the experiences, to kind of get people together in a room. Ordinarily, that wouldn't come together, but by virtue of having a baby or about to have a baby, they'd find a common ground. The Venn diagram that we spoke about the other day.
So it was, you were able to help to facilitate that conversation.
Look, my mum had 8 kids. I knew how to change a nappy. I'm good at changing a nappy now. I can do that. I can do all that stuff. I'm very good with. But what do I know about the experiences of having a baby? What do I know about the challenges of going off from work and then coming back to work, and part-time working. And in those days, part-time working wasn't a big thing. Career break wasn't a big thing. Job share. So there was a pressure of, can I afford to take time off? What can I do? And so you just kind of thought, well, you know, one lady friend called Elaine, can you speak to Joanna? If I organise a room and a coffee, just have a chat about what you're going through, what's happening, and everything else. I can give them all the rules and regulations, but beyond that, it's about what you're feeling, how you're feeling in the first month of pregnancy, the 6th month of pregnancy, the conversations about what to wear, you know, and all that, and even, you know, even expressing milk. We didn't have provisions for expressing milk, you know, and all that stuff. So it wasn't that great. I mean, looking back on it, we had what we had, but you did think, actually, you know, if this was my mum, what would I want my mum to experience? And you could see some women, it was an issue. Oh, your bump is showing. How do they? And culturally sensitive issues as well. You know, lots of women had own ways of, what do they say? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? And you could see that there were some of those difficult conversations that I didn't think I could get into as a young man, you know, 20, 21 years of age. I could only use my resources and my powers to arrange that and let them have that conversation and get on with it.
So being in the Home Office and working in the prison services and stuff like that, as a man from a South Asian background from Bangladesh, how did that play out in terms of the demographics of the prison population, but also the people who were organizing, in terms of, were there many people of color in the environment which you were in, and how did that play out for you?
Not initially in my immediate team. I think I was the only person that was non-white. Around me, there were a few friends who were of African Caribbean heritage. I you know, and to this day, one of my big brothers, so to speak, and someone I admire a lot, and he's godfather to my children, Paul Horton. He was someone that through our football, we had a really active football team. Socially, we did it. In terms of the prison population, in the late 80s, early 90s, the issue was the overrepresentation of young black men in the prison system, and I think these were primarily the children of the initial influx of migrants from the Caribbean. You kind of got a sense that there was that going on. In terms of the Asian population, it wasn't that much, you know, it wasn't. And I remember at the time, it's quite ironic that the Asian community was being held up as the kind of the role models for every migrant community to be like, even Muslims. Sadly, the narrative is slightly different now. But in terms of the senior people, there were few and far between. The population, like I said, Wayne, was around the increasing number of young black men coming into the prison population, and the challenges that was representing to an institution that was primarily run by white men. Officers were usually ex-military, ex-forces, and how do you cater for, or do you even need to cater for these people, as they were referred to, and what that meant? And obviously, recently we've seen the Uprising series of documentaries, and the sus laws, and what that meant, and how that, if you imagine the criminal justice system, from arrests to kind of charge, you go to court, you then get sentenced, you end up in prison, where at the end of that process, so when they come into the prison, having been through the courts and the police, already feeling victimized and not dealt with properly, so when they land in prison, it's an altogether different experience. And the people that are there, you know, we now talk about rehabilitation. I think rehabilitation has always been at the heart of the prison system, going back years, many years. But it's difficult to do that when the people that look at you or are looking after you may not be able to connect with you for various reasons.
Yeah.
And it must have been difficult again for a system to be able to absorb the increasing numbers of young black men coming into the prison service to serve sentences where for a lot of them it was a brutal experience, difficult experience, and some of them were just victims of injustice as well. You know, so those conversations were there. We were around those. It didn't really manifest itself much until the Stephen Lawrence inquiry in '99.
Yeah.
When I really got involved in issues to do with race and equality. Up until that point, Wayne, I'd say to my great shame, I was almost ambivalent to what was happening. It didn't really concern me. I was doing well. I got some promotions. I was okay. I didn't really see it as an issue initially. It's only when I was asked to do a piece of work around an inquiry that I began to realize that I'd been asleep for my first 10 years in my career in the prison service. You know, and you have these moments where you think, wow, where have I been?
Yeah.
I was aware, I had an understanding, but it was one or two incidents that I got involved in through other people, and I saw their suffering. I thought, whoa, you need to put a stop to this. I need to wait. I need to almost. I don't know if you've seen that film Liar Liar, where Jim Carrey beats himself up in the toilets.
Yeah, I think,
I had to do that to myself because I just thought, what is this? I read this report, quite a detailed report about the experience of ethnic minority staff in the prison service, and I thought, whoa, this is intense. This is heavy. How can this be real? And then the penny dropped when one of my good friends, and I can mention Paul, said he was one of the recipients and one of the people who took part. And he showed me what he said, and I thought, wow. And he said at that time, you didn't talk about your victims of racism to anyone because for fear of being ostracized or being bullied.
Wow.
You just put your head down and got on with it. And I just thought, whoa. And Paul's like a big brother to me. He's a big brother. He's someone I worship a lot and I respect, and I hang in his every word. Like I said, he's godfather to my children. I'm godfather to Matthew. And when I saw that, I thought, how can someone I hero worship, I admire, have to go through this nonsense? And then I just thought, right, I need to grow up. I need to step up. I need to do whatever I can in the position I've got and get on with it. It's almost like all the learning that my dad and mum had given me over that time had kind of, at a crossroads, what are you going to do?
Could I just interject at that point? Because based on the timelines, if I'm getting it correct, your dad must have just passed away at that time as well. Is that right?
He'd been passed about 7 years.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he'd passed. Yeah. But all those things came flooding back, and I thought, what would he do?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was just thinking if it was kind of like a situational thing to think, well, my dad was always out there advocating for those who didn't have a voice, those who needed letters, etc. He was there for them. So it's almost like a passing on the mantle to his eldest son, if that makes sense.
Yeah, although I kind of forgot that for a few years.
Right.
I think once I took his body back to Bangladesh, buried him, came back, kind of got on with my life as best as I could. Got on with my career, got some promotions, got married, and then I thought, hold on, I've almost kind of dropped the baton. Not deliberately or consciously. You just the way you are when you're in your mid-20s, you're doing things, you're going out, you're doing what you're doing, and everything else. You're partying, everything. You're creating a life for yourself. You got a home, you got a wife, you got this, you got that. This is just before my daughter was born in November of '99. So that and the millennium and everything else. So that 1999 on lots of levels, late '98, and Stephen Lawrence and what was going on, and reading the Lawrence Inquiry report and other things. Really, oh gosh, I thought, what's the point of me? Why am I here? what am I doing? You know, and I just thought, actually, I think I can do this as well as anyone.
Yeah.
Let me give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? They can sack me.
Yeah.
In those days, it was difficult to sack civil servants. So.
Yeah. Listen, it still is, but Rob, Abdul, I'm just looking at the time. Normally, I would have already asked if there was any questions from the audience, but this has just been so fascinating in understanding from a different demographic the things which have helped to influence your sense of identity and belonging. I'm going to ask if anyone does have any questions. If you want to just raise your hands, then or put it in the chat, then that would be great. Otherwise, I'm just trying to piece together this picture that you've painted, because I know many of the interactions which I've had with you has been with regards to the Reach Society, our network conversations and stuff like that. And I've always seen you as someone who's like your Windrush, the Windrush magazine, which you produce, the Black History Month magazine. You always seem to be on the pulse of the community. And hearing your story, I kind of like understand a little bit better as to why that is. But it's one thing having that consciousness. It's another thing putting that consciousness into action. So what was it that got you to that stage where you said, you know what, this is what I'm going to do?
I think it's that belief and understanding that we've got to be of service. We've got to be of value to people. You know, I always say to people, what are you going to do about it? Do something, do anything. And my dad always, actually, there's no point. You just got to do something. And if it is to be, it's up to me. If not me, who? If not now, when? So that, and I suppose I've always been a bit of a busybody. I've always got an opinion. You know, I'm a great team player. Like I said, on my own, I'm okay. There's certain things I can do on my own, but in a team, I love being in a team. I love collaborating. I love building teams. I was leading teams at the age of 18 in the post office and in the prison service at 22, managing people 2-3 times my age. And one thing that I was always taught was about the duty of care. We all have a duty of care to whoever we have in our lives. And that duty of care, I kind of, you know, it's about what you can do for others. And also, actually, if you look back in history, Doreen, Lawrence and Neville could have just grieved for their child and left it.
Yeah.
They fought. Everything that we have that we take for granted in our lives today, someone fought hard, fought for that, whatever that may be. Anything that you have. So you think, actually, you can't take these things for granted.
Yeah.
You know, the things that I enjoyed as a child, I enjoyed as a young man. I know that, you know, people like my dad had to go on demonstrations, you know, against the National Front. They smashed our shop window. My dad dragged one of them into the shop and put his head on the meat block and threatened to chop it off with his meat cleaver. You know, my dad didn't care. He said, "You don't smash my window." The man wet himself on the floor.
Yeah.
The next day, the police came and asked my dad politely, "Please don't do that again," as our committee member. Privately, he said, "Well done." Never happened again. Not to say you advocate violence, but when you smash a shop window, which is 8 foot by 10 foot, and think you can get away with it.
Yeah.
You know, so my dad's thing was always action. My mum always action. And I think, like I said, I've been influenced by a lot of great people. And I use the word great because, yes, there are great people out in the world, but to me, it's those I can touch. People like you and Donald and Rob and Paul, those I can touch and feel and I can learn off you. Your greatness, what you do every day is what I try to teach my children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make the people that you can see in your lives, those people that you aspire to. Yes, you can be like Messi and whoever else and Denzel Washington. They're unique people. We're not going to meet them. They can be inspiring, but the call for action comes from what you can affect for people around you.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah. And I know that I've affected, and not that I boast about it or talk about it, but before I left the prison service in November 2016, a young man, Asian man from Yorkshire came to see me and just reminded me that I went to visit Yorkshire, Leeds, I think, in early 2012 to give a talk about joining the prison service. Long story short, he said, I'd never met an Asian person in a suit before from the Home Office or the prison service. And your conversation and your demand for us to join the prison service has led me to join the prison service. And he wanted to thank me for that. And I thought, I was quite embarrassed. I thought, wow, I'm not sure what I said to you or if it made any sense, but he was a prison governor that had to come. He came down. He heard I was leaving, and he wanted to thank me for. And I thought, that's really amazing. And I just said to him, look, just encourage someone else to join the prison service.
Yeah.
And I did feel it, because I don't like praise. I don't. I think sometimes you do your job, you get on with it. Some of us have. I love to stand on ceremony. It's what I call them. The motivated by self-interest, into MSI. You see loads of people grandstanding, and I can't do that. I just want to get on with it in the background. No one needs to know that what we do. A bit like yourself, Wayne. You're a very humble man. You do what you do. You get on with it. So it is that need to be part of. When I always say it's not community, it's common unity.
I love that.
I talk about the common unity. So when I look at the word community, it's common unity is our strength. And again, great friends and influences around me. And I always think to myself, what would Rob Neal do in this situation? What would Donald Palmer do? What would Wayne? What would Paul? I always think to myself, I know I'm not the perfect person, but in my head, I've got enough people in my life that I know personally that have got the abilities and attributes that I don't always have. I always think, actually, how can I? And I'm almost, I suppose, I'm an imposter as well. Kind of, and I stalk people. I've got no shame in that. I don't need to know something. I know that you know what you know, Wayne, and I will use you, and I will ask you to facilitate. Why do I need to know? And if you look at the team around you, we've got so many people in our lives that we can bring together. And one thing I'm good at is facilitating people. I can pull people together to a common cause, whether it's Black History Month or Windrush. If I've got that passion in me, that comes from my my love of all things to do with the Black community as a child growing up. I think of my Auntie Fairy. I think of my Auntie Mrs. Warb. I think of two dear friends who I lost in a fire when they were now 9 and 7. Of Nigeria. I always think of people that influence me, so in my head I'm every man. I'm everything, and I love different cultures. I love food, and I use food as a way to talk about diversity. Our food, what we have on our plate is it's so amazing, the foods that we enjoy, where it comes from. And I will go to anyone's house to eat anything just to understand them and their culture and their food. And when we spoke on Wednesday, my dad always used to say, you can't argue sitting down. And you got to break bread with strangers. Break bread with a stranger, you get to know them. It humanizes you. Unless it's a family gathering, well, there's always an argument, but that's a separate point. But it is about, if there's something to be done, I'll do it. Yes, I do procrastinate. If you ask my wife, I have procrastinate pants. We all men have procrastinate pants. All married men have procrastinate pants. We're always going to do it, Us men are either going to change the world or we're going to do nothing. We don't have to.
Listen, I'm laughing because I know exactly what you mean. So,
But like I said, it is about doing what we can. I suppose I'm at that stage in my life, 51, children. I've got human social capital. I've got an interest in what's going on in lots of different ways, and I've got access to people and contacts. So I need to make use of that. If I don't, then what is the point of me? Why was I born here? As a child of an immigrant, we're privileged to be born here. Those of us who've been back to our parents' homeland, we can see some of the challenges that exist. And you kind of think, whoa, we accident at birth. My dad was an accident at birth. These children were born here. None of us intended to have children. And I'm sure if I speak to your parents, auntie and uncle, your dad may have said the same. He wasn't sure whether he's going to bring up a child in this country. That was a
Definitely.
huge
Yeah.
risk, given the racism and the issues they face. Why put that onto a child, a baby?
Yeah.
You know,
That's 100%.
You know, and those experiences are the same, different. You know, so for me, you know, my view is I'm here to support and help anyone, because you know, I've been supported by lots of people, indirectly and directly. And if we don't give back, we shouldn't just take.
Yeah.
We should be measured by how much we give back, not by how much we take. And
Yeah.
sadly, far too often, it's about me, more,
Yeah.
and the rest of it.
Abdul, yeah. Unfortunately, we have exhausted our time. I heard a comment in the chat saying it was fantastic to hear your story, which I 100%. I could sit and I could talk with you for hours, and I know that we have in the past, right? Because it's just fascinating. And do you know the quote, which the common unity is our strength? Yeah, the community, the common unity is our strength. And I think that that is so, so true. And it's about that, as you said to me on Wednesday, it's about finding those pockets, finding those areas where we can have that common ground, where we can then start the conversation and start to unpick the things which actually, if we didn't have that common ground, we wouldn't recognize how big the common ground is, because sometimes we narrow it down and say we look for just the differences and not for some of the things which make us more uniquely and make us more connected. So all I can say is another really, really, really big thank you for coming on. I know that I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation this afternoon.
No, thank you. And feel free to use that phrase. It's not a phrase that it's you know, we use it, share it, do what you want with it. Like I said, it's not something that I think is that I don't. It's something that I've kind of thought over time.
Yeah.
You know, that we need to have those bits that bring us together. And I think the belonging. I love what you're doing. Thank you. And it's not easy. It's hard work. You're so busy. You've got lockdown challenges. And thank you for inviting me to be part of the conversation. I hope it's been of some interest to someone out there.
I'm 100% sure that it is. It's interesting that it's South Asian History Month as well, and the way that you unpacked your father's story was just brilliant. It actually highlighted the kind of like different trajectories, but the different trajectories which were so similar from the Caribbean, from Africa, from the South Asian continent, about people migrating to this country because it was viewed as the motherland because of our colonial historical past. You know,
as my mum said, we were hungry.
Yeah,
we're hungry.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's been absolutely. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just say another big thank you, and I'm going to just let people know what we're going to be having next week. So please, if you can join us again next week, that would be great. And next week, we will be having Nikita Ruth, and she's the communications and events organizer, freelance musician and music and entertainment journalist, and she's going to be coming and giving her experiences next week about what it is that she does. And if you have missed any of the Belonging series, please go and have a look at our YouTube site, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO, where you can see this one and many other interviews which we've done. It's all about understanding who we are. So I want to just say another big thank you to Abdul, and to say thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks.
Cheers, mate. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.